Hello everybody and welcome back to Isaac24. Today I am sitting in my storytelling chair, which definitely is not the driver's seat out of a 2000 Chevy Tahoe, and I am going to tell you all the story of my work truck. So let's get started. Remember, first things first, for safety, remember, always buckle up. Yes, I am sitting in a Chevy Tahoe driver's seat with a built-in seatbelt. Anyways, you all have seen the video of my truck, and I figured I'd do a sort of story time video talking about the background of it, the details, some of the interesting stuff that not all of you will know about it. So in case you don't know, it is a 2007 Ford F150. It is an XLT trim level with the 4.6 liter V8 engine and an automatic transmission. It's two-wheel drive, it's a super cab, which is extended cab, and it has the 6.5 foot bed, which is the middle bed size. So I bought that truck on June 30th, 2023. I'm not going to say how much I paid for it. I paid probably a little more than it's worth, but I wouldn't say outrageously a lot. The truck has at the time, had 162,000 miles. It now has 164,000. I don't daily drive it, so the miles don't go up a ton. And the only things that I have done to it were I added the toolbox that's on it. You guys have seen the red toolbox in the video. That did not come with it. It did not have a toolbox, which I will elaborate on why I bought a toolbox here in a little bit. I swapped out the crappy Pioneer aftermarket radio for a factory Ford radio. I've done an oil change. I've put a set of tires on it. I've maybe filled the overflow coolant tank once or twice, maybe 3 times. I'm fairly certain it may have a small coolant leak somewhere because it does drain maybe once a month, just a teeny little bit, just enough to where I like to add a little bit. And then full disclosure, because even though I am a Ford truck guy, any Ford guy or Chevy guy or GM guy or Dodge, Toyota, whatever, they could all hype up their favorite brand and say, oh, Ford's the best this reason, Chevy's the best this reason, Toyota's the best for this reason. The true fans of the brand will admit their faults. A real Ford guy or a real Toyota guy will acknowledge that the 5.43 valve is a boat anchor. They will acknowledge that, yes, Toyotas have frame rot issues. They will acknowledge that, yes, Chevys make cheap interiors and transmission problems. And they'll acknowledge that Dodges are, well... Okay, anyways. So, I will admit I have fixed one thing on it. Technically, it could use the second one. However, I'm not going to do it. That truck has suicide doors. In September, the latch system on the driver's side suicide door broke. So when you would pull the lever to open the door, the top latch would unlatch itself, but the bottom was stuck shut. So you could not open the door. I took it to the dealership. I paid a pretty decent amount and I fixed it. Ironically, a month later, 3 weeks later, the passenger's door did the same thing, and I have not fixed it. The passenger suicide door currently does not open because the bottom latch is stuck shut. I've thought about fixing it myself, but it's very complicated, and even with looking at ProDemand and Identifix and all of that, I'm probably going to pay to have it done, but I'm not going to do it yet. The driver's side door was very inconvenient because I couldn't get into the back seat easily, but with it being the passenger's door, I'm not totally as concerned about it because I can just get in on the driver's side, and for the rare occasion that I actually have people in the back seat, it's not that big of an issue. So there are a couple things on the truck that don't work, that didn't work when I bought it. When I bought it, both of the doors, the suicide doors, opened. There's a couple things on it that don't work. One of them is the parking brake. It is very loose when you press the pedal down. It does work maybe once in a blue moon a little bit, but, for example, my driveway is very steep, and if you park on it and put the brake on fully, when you put it in park and take your foot off the brake, it still lurches backwards or forwards if you're backed in. And then when you put it in gear, you hear a boom from the parking pole. So, not great, but I don't park in the driveway often. I just don't use the brake. It's fine. I mean, I park on a flat street. The other thing on it that doesn't work, which is very minor, is that it has a locking tailgate and the actual lock assembly is broken. You can put the key in and turn it either way, and it turns, but the little metal arm inside that's supposed to connect to the rods that pull it is broken. So you can't lock the tailgate, which isn't a huge deal, but it is something to mention. Everything else on the truck works. The only ongoing mechanical issues that I've had with it were... So I should mention, when I bought the truck, it had a set of Laughlin brand tires on it. I'm not sure what kind they were. They were not like mud terrain. They were just regular all-season Laughlin tires, which I found out is made by Hankook. They had maybe 6/32 of an inch of tread left, maybe 5/32, so they were pretty worn down, but they weren't unusable. I think they could have still had another year. The problem is that they were made in 2015, so they were 8 years old, which might be okay even for not daily driving, but when I do drive it, my commute is 15 miles each way, or 13, 18, it's about 15, and it's a bumpy road. I just didn't really want to risk it, so I ended up buying a new set of tires for it. I bought a set of Firestone Destination LE3s, which were, at the time, what I could get because I kind of wanted them in a hurry. Typically for tires, I go to Bell Tire, which I didn't do, and you'll find out why in a second. Typically, I go to Bell Tire and I find the cheapest set of name brand tires that I can buy. You can go to Bell Tire's website, type in any tire size, and the first 5 tire options that come up are, I want to say the names, but it's gonna sound offensive because they're all Chinese, Japanese names that nobody's heard of. Like, I think Crosswind was one of them, Nankang, Otsu, Prince, Salin, Fusion. They're all these just shitty, cheap Chinese Westlake, no-name, dangerous, some of them tires. I don't like spending money, and I typically don't, but I will not, under any circumstances, cheap out on tires. There's a reason I forked up a lot of money for a set of Firestone tires. I will not, and I refuse to buy non-name brand tires. The only non-name brand that is cheap that I would personally buy is Starfire. Starfire is a brand that's made by Cooper, and it is Cooper's budget brand. That said, they are very inexpensive, and I have heard nothing but good things about them. I've installed them on a lot of cars. They have deep tread, very thick sidewalls that don't have a lot of bulge. They're actually very well made. They're made to the same standards as regular Cooper tires. So the only, under any circumstance, brand that I would buy that is not a name brand is Starfire. Okay, anyways, that truck has TPMS, as does most modern cars, and it has a little light on the dashboard. Well, ever since I installed the Firestone tires, which I did at a Firestone location, I've had an issue with the front passenger's tire constantly losing air. I've also noticed that if I go over a big bump, my TPMS light turns on. That said, I will check, so my truck calls for 38 psi of air in the tires, which is also the max that the tires should have. The front driver's one will be at 35, the back two will be at 35, 34, 38, whatever. The front passenger one will be at 25. And I've been airing it up, and I really need to take it to the other Firestone across town and explain to them what's happening, because if you watch my series of videos on that Firestone, they screwed up the installation process royally, which you can watch below. I'm convinced that they broke one of my sensors. And I'm convinced that they caused a rim leak somewhere on my front passenger tire. I think what I'm going to do at some point before it gets too cold is I'm going to put the front up on jack stands, and I'm going to swap the driver's side tire and the passenger side tire and see if that tire keeps losing air, or if it's just something with that side of the truck. Maybe I need an alignment or something. If not, I think there's going to be a continuing video on Firestone. Okay. Anyways, so that is the only ongoing mechanical issue that I've had. I did replace a battery back a few months ago, although that and tires are consumable items. But other than that, I haven't done anything to it. It's been perfectly fine. Starts up every time, even on cold mornings. It is a little underpowered, but I attribute that to having the small V8. But anyways, so let me just explain to you, I guess, first I'll talk about the buying experience I had, then I'll talk about the truck's actual history. So, June 30th, 2023 was a Friday, I remember that. I think the Wednesday before that, so June 28th, I had been looking on F-150s. I had been looking for an F-150 for a very long time, specifically that 11th generation. And the problem was I wanted specifically an 11th generation with the 4.6 V8, not the 5.4 V8. Go on Marketplace right now and find me an 11th generation F-150 with the 4.6. Good luck. 99% of the 11th generation F-150s for sale have the 5.4. And while some people I know have had good luck out of them, I was not willing to risk it. I said, hell no. And that's the reason why it took me so long to find a truck. I didn't really want a 10th gen just because they're older now, and the 12th gens have a big price jump, even though they introduced the EcoBoost and the 5.0 and all that. Really wanted that 11th gen. So it took a very long time. In fact, I searched for virtually a year to find an 11th gen. My other problem was I was absolutely dead set on a crew cab. 4-door crew cab. And you're saying, well, you have an extended cab now. Yeah, I do. I sacrificed. I, at the time, did not care if I got a crew cab with only a 5.5-foot bed as long as it was a crew cab. I did not care about the bed space, which in hindsight, I'm glad I have a 6.5-foot bed because I may have filled it 5 or 6 times and wished I had a bigger one. But anyways, I didn't care whether the bed was small. One thing that I messed up on is that if you buy, the first 4-door truck in America was the F-150 Super Crew in 2001, and it was exclusively sold with a 5.5-foot bed because Ford figured you're buying a 4-door truck, probably going to haul people, you don't need a giant 6.5-foot or 8-foot bed. I had a buddy that had one. He loved it. Lariat, nice truck. 2-valve 5.4. Okay, the 11th gen came out, and I believe it was either 05 or 06. I want to say it was 06. Ford started offering the Super Crew cab with a 6.5-foot bed. It is not easy to find them, but they did offer a mid-size bed with the full 4-door cab. Like I said, it's not easy to find. I don't see a lot of them out there. I think all of them have the 5.4 because I think it was just standard. The Lariat trucks are all short bed. It's hard to find one. My coworker has one with a 5.4, and I did not even realize that it was a 6.5-foot bed till after I bought my truck and said, oh, wait a minute, that's not a short bed. I assumed that all of the Super Crews had a short 5.5-foot bed. Well, I realized also that after buying mine, an extended cab, especially in an 07, is not terrible because once you get to that late 2000s, they really started making the extended cabs nicer. You know, roll-down windows, full 3-point seat belts, full bench seat. They started making them a little nicer. In fact, the back seat room in my truck is actually, I would say, on par with a Civic. It's actually not bad at all. Obviously, a Super Crew with a foot added to the cab is bigger, but it's been okay for the few times I carry people. And combined with having the 6.5-foot bed means it's not really that long. If I had gotten a Super Crew with a 6.5-foot bed, you add a foot to the entire length. And ironically, it's very hard to find. They actually made a Super Cab, which is extended cab, with an 8-foot bed in the 11th generation. It looks goofy as all hell. They did make it, and I've seen one of them around town. The whole truck is doing this. Anyways, the other problem is that those trucks are notorious for frame rot, and because Ford is not Toyota, they did not replace them for you. So 99% of the ones where I live in Michigan are rotted to crap. So it was very hard to find one that fit my specs, and I figured I'm probably going to have to compromise on something. It is not going to be the 5.4. I knew that in the back of my head. I said, I am not buying a 5.4 no matter what. I don't care. I don't care about the people that have had good luck with them. I am not dealing with that. I am not having, in my opinion, GM-style issues on my truck. I'm just not doing it. Needless to say, I'd been looking at F-150s on Marketplace, and so when I went on Marketplace, F-150s came up. That Wednesday night, I had come home from work. It was about 8 o'clock. Go on the old Facebook Marketplace, why not, see what's recommended for me. And the first post that came up was for a 2007 Ford F-150 extended cab that was gold, and it was listed in Lansing. And I thought, interesting. It was a little more than I was hoping to spend, but I thought, I'm going to look at this. Now, from the pictures, It did not show the engine bay, and I could not zoom in enough to see the badging, which, if you know, on the 11th generation F-150, there's really only one way to tell from the outside of the truck whether it's a 4.6 or a 5.4, and that is on the fender badging. If you have a truck that, for example, says XLT Triton, like mine does, it's the 4.6. Every 5.4 F-150 on that badge will say XLT 5.4 Triton. They all say that, and that is a dead giveaway as to whether you have a 4.6 or a 5.4. If it just says Triton or XL Triton or XLT Triton, no numbering, it's a 4.6. And I could not zoom in enough to see that. My first initial thought was, ooh, this truck is pretty nice, but it probably has the 5.4. I mean, of course it does. What are the odds? It's almost too good to be true, but I'm sure it has the 5.4. And it was rust-free, which it didn't mention anything about it being from out of state. It just said rust-free for the most part. It was two-wheel drive, which is something I wanted. I do not like four-wheel drive, and I don't want shit to break, in my opinion. I don't go off-roading. I don't need it. It had a mid-sized bed, 6.5 foot, and it was an extended cab, but based on the pictures, I was like, I think I can make that work. It's not horribly small. But in the pictures, he did show his license plate, and I thought, you know what? I'm sure it's the 5.4, but just for the hell of it, I'm going to look up on the facts of it. I'm going to look up and see what engine's in it. I'm sure it's the 5.4, but just for the hell of it, he showed his license plate. Why not? So I type in the license plate. It's loading. I'm like, yeah, it's 5.4. I'm not going to get too excited anyway, even though it is a nice truck. And I about shat my pants when the menu came up and it said engine displacement 4.6 liters. I legitimately about shat my pants. I said, holy shit, this is a clean, semi-low mileage, two-wheel drive, I want to call it a long bed, but it's not technically a long bed. Long bed, automatic F-150, decent trim level. It is an extended cab, but it's rust-free from all the pictures, and it's priced that it's a little more than I wanted to spend, but I knew I could swing it. And immediately after that, I hit send. Hey, is this available? A couple minutes later, the guy writes back, and of course I did check his profile to make sure he wasn't a dealer. It was the only car listed on his page. He said, yes. First question that I always hit him with, are you flexible on price? His answer was along the lines of, yeah, a little bit, but I'd probably wait till it's on the market longer. Fair enough. So my second question that I always hit him with is this a clean title? And his response was, yes. Are there other kinds? And I said, yeah, you could have a salvage title. He said, no, this is clean. So the next question was, hey, I'm not far from you. Could I come look at this truck tomorrow? His response, because what my plan was if I could go look at it the next day is I could go to the bank before that and get some cash because I was fairly certain that I was going to take this one home. He said, I can't do tomorrow. I'm going to be in Detroit all day. I can't do it. And I said, okay, what about Friday? And he said, yeah, I'm available till 3 p.m. And I said, done. What time can I come? He said, can you do 10 o'clock? I said, done. Done deal. See you at 10. What's your address? So-and-so, whatever. The ad was pretty primitive. There were probably 8 or 10 pictures of the outside and the inside. It basically said something like clean F-150, decent condition, well taken care of. Couple things it pointed out. It said Kurt brand hitch and trailer brake installed. Very little towing of light travel trailer was done. It also mentioned recent $1,700 replacement of intake manifold. And I thought, okay, that's decent. He also said new exhaust pipe, aftermarket, louder exhaust, which if you've listened to my videos, it does have an aftermarket exhaust that's a little louder than factory. It's pretty grumbly. And so essentially I was like, this is it. I found the truck. And if I go look at it and everything checks out, I think I'm going to buy it. I went and looked at it. I saw that it needed probably some new tires and it needed a spare. It did not come with a spare tire. I ended up buying a spare tire. Everything else checked out. I drove it. It was, I was like, ooh, this thing's big. Because I was used to driving an Explorer, which is a lot smaller. And I was like, ooh, this thing's big. Everything works. AC's ice cold. Radio works. Speakers work. Windows work. Trailer brake works. It lights up the brake lights. Get back to the guy's house, and I'm sold at this point. I said, perfect. So I tell him, I say, hey, nicest F-150 I've seen by far. Legitimately, the only rust that's not surface is there's some bubbling on the bottom of the passenger's door in that little fender area. I said, this is the nicest I've looked at. It probably will need a set of tires at some point. That said, I have cash today, ready to go. I will sign the title right now for X amount. And the first thing he said was, yep, perfect, sold. Actually, he just said sold. But essentially, he didn't even try to argue back. He was just like, sold. And that's when I knew. I was like, probably could have gotten it for lower. I did not offer him much lower than his asking price because I wanted it. I said, I'm taking this. And he was like, yep, sold. So he went in, we went into his house, we signed the title, he got the keys, spare keys, he got some paperwork on it, and I said, I'm a truck man now. I mean, the Explorer was a truck, but whatever. Drove it home, whatever, and that was it. That was the buying experience. So one interesting thing to note is I will admit I did this after, I ran a Carfax on it, being that I had the license plate and the VIN number. And I found some interesting things on the Carfax. So the first thing is, I am the 6th owner of that truck, which is roughly a new owner every 2 or 3 years. Okay, that's fine. Not totally suspicious. The truck did start life out in Georgia. I'm not sure where in Georgia, but it was in Georgia, not like Atlanta. It was, rural Georgia, probably a farm truck, being 2-wheel drive, and in Georgia. Had a clean title indeed. There were some interesting things, though, on the title. For one, there were 2 accidents reported. The first accident happened, I believe, in 2011 or 12, and it was some slight damage to the front passenger side of the bumper. So a new headlight, a new bumper, a new grille, everything else was intact. They probably hit a deer. The second accident was in, I believe, 2016, and this one was a bit more severe. The description for the accident was single vehicular bridge accident, vehicle slid into guardrail, which, according to the Carfax, the entire passenger side of the truck was destroyed. Not totaled, I assume, because the frame was still straight, but hit hard enough that it needed new hood, new grille, new fender, new radiator, new headlights, new fender, new door, new suicide door, new bedside, new wheels, new suspension parts. So it was obviously a somewhat severe accident. However, it was no other vehicles involved. And I thought, I don't know about that. But when I looked at the truck, it did check out. It was rebuilt very well. The only evidence that it was ever in an accident and rebuilt is that when you slam the front 2 doors closed, you can hear sort of I guess the best way to put it is a metal tapping sound, like that, like a little bit of a sound. And when the driver's window is all the way down and you go over a bump, you can hear the window rattling in the track. That is the only evidence that suggests that it was in an accident. I'm playing with the lumbar support on the seat, sorry. However, that wasn't the most interesting thing that I found. The most interesting thing I found was when I went to register the vehicle. That truck had a VIN hold on it. The reason it had a VIN hold is because the guy I bought it from was a convicted drunk driver, which means he was either DUI'd twice in 7 years or 3 times in 10 years. It was enough damage that they put a VIN hold on his truck, which meant when he went to sell it, he could not sell it to a family member, and when it went through the Secretary of State, they were going to put a mark on it and say, stop, hold it, we have to make sure that this is not going to a family member. And sure enough, we went to check it out. He's typing the number. He goes, wait a second, I'm going to go get my manager real quick. And my dad works for the state. He knows how the process works. He said, is it a VIN hold? And he goes, yup. So my dad was like, the guy was a convicted drunk driver. That's how it works in Michigan. They put a hold on your VIN. And we had to verify that we are not related to the seller, which we're not. So that was the most interesting thing I found. And from when I met the guy, I kind of was like, yeah, I could see him being a DUI guy. He purchased the truck in 2019 from Betten Baker Used Cars in Granville, I believe. There's actually a sticker on the back that says Betten Baker Buick, and it came with a license plate frame that said Betten Baker Used Cars, where Michigan shops, which my assumption is that the building it came from used to be Betten Baker Buick. Betten Baker is a chain. And now it is Betten Baker Used Cars. So I would imagine when that truck was there, they were either in the process of switching it over, which is why it said both Betten Baker Buick and Betten Baker Used Cars. Or my other thought was it was Betten Baker Buick when the truck was there, but the license plate frames that they used for all of their used cars just said Betten Baker, so they didn't have to specify Buick, Chevy, GMC, whatever. Newer Betten Baker license plate frames say Buick GMC, Buick, Chevy, Toyota. So I think that that's because they used to use the same license plate frame for everything. I don't have the plate on it, but the sticker is still there. So he purchased it from them. I do have a little bit of paperwork that I'll go ahead and show you at some point, but really, I haven't done anything to the truck other than the tires, the battery, and the door. At some point, I think I'm going to get the tailgate lock fixed, because the main reason I bought a toolbox is because even with an extended cab, I knew that all my junk and my tools were not going to fit under the seat. They did for a period of time, but it was really, really tight. I knew I wanted a toolbox. I knew I wasn't going to be able to afford one because they're ridiculously expensive, and I hadn't looked, and they were just expensive. I found the one that's on there on Marketplace for $50, about half an hour north of here, and I said, even though it's beat up and it has a homemade lock on it because the original key is lost, whatever. I didn't even expect it to be watertight, but it is. Paint's flaking, it's beat to crap. The guy who had it before me said that he had it on a red GMC, which is why it was red. Didn't come with the hardware, I had to buy the hardware, but for $50, it's awesome. It works great. Other than the paint is flaking off from all the sunlight. But at some point, I would like to get a Truxedo truck sport tonneau cover, which if you don't know what a Truxedo is, it is not a traditional tonneau cover that's hard and folds up. It is a rolling piece of vinyl that rolls up about that thick and gets strapped to the back of the bed. So within 30 seconds, you can have the tonneau cover essentially gone. It rides on rails that sit on the bed rails, and it's kind of expensive. But I knew I did not want a topper, because even though they're the most versatile, if you take it off, it's a pain in the ass, and they are a pain in the ass to store. You can't really store a topper, it's difficult. And you have to wire in brake lights. I knew I didn't want a topper. There's also hard tonneau covers, which is what my grandpa suggested. My problem with hard tonneau covers is that if you want to carry big stuff, as I often do, you can't remove them easily. The only true solution for that is a Truxedo, which I think is what I'm going to end up purchasing. But before I do that, I need to fix the tailgate lock, because there's no point in getting a Truxedo if you can't lock the tailgate. It defeats the purpose of having the Truxedo. That said, if I get the Truxedo, I can put some of my tools in the bed, keep the cover closed, and then when I'm going to carry big stuff, 30 seconds, unlatch the Truxedo, roll it up, tie it back to the window, and there's no cover. So I think that that's what I'm going to end up doing, and just nix the toolbox altogether. There's nothing particularly wrong with the toolbox, except for that it takes up a good foot of space in the bed, and I have certainly filled the bed up before and wished I had more space, and I said if the damn toolbox wasn't there, there'd be more space. So I think at some point I'm going to nix the toolbox for a Truxedo. Not until I can get a Truxedo, of course. But that's the only other thing, other than maybe fixing the parking brake, that I can see myself doing in the foreseeable future. I think I'm going to fix the door at some point, but I'm probably going to wait until I get the Truxedo. If I don't end up just going to the junkyard and getting a new handle and swapping the lock cylinder from mine into that handle so that I can use the same key, and I end up paying a dealer for it, then I'm probably just going to have them fix the door and the lock at the same time. I have one dealer that's slightly out of town that I use because they're good. But I think that's what my plan is going to be, So in the future, I may get a Truxedo. Maybe Christmas, I'm not going to say anything. I do have some money. Truxedo makes a cover that will fit. It's kind of difficult to install, but I would argue that the Toolbox was more difficult because I had to drill all my own holes, make my own hardware, whatever. I do have a drop-in bed liner, but I'm not sure it's going to get in the way of that issue. I actually need to re-tack the bed liner because there's pieces of it that aren't glued down anymore. But that's it. That is the story of my F-150. It's bone stock other than the exhaust and the toolbox. That's literally it. Everything else on the truck is stock. And by stock, I mean original technically, because with the accident, the door is not original. Which is the other reason why on the driver's door, the VIN sticker is peeled off, which is a pain in my ass because I don't know what the date code was built. You know, I have the VIN, but it's on the windshield. I wish they hadn't peeled the sticker off. It's possible that they replaced both the driver door and passenger door in the bad accident and then peeled the sticker off. Maybe. My guess, maybe, I would assume. But that's what I would guess. But it's bone stock. It is slow as piss and it gets horrible gas mileage, which I've been told that my math something needs to be cleaned from the people on the forum. Not totally worried about it because I don't daily drive it. And it's been good. That's the story. That is my F-150, and at some point I may be making a video installing a Truxedo. So now we're going to go upstairs real quick. Take my seatbelt off here. We're going to go upstairs, and I am going to show you all some of the paperwork. So let's head upstairs. All right, everyone, now I'm going to show you some of the paperwork I have. So this is the folder I keep it in. Just says F-150 on it. First things first, there's 4 keys for it. This is the main one that I use every day. It is basically what the original was, but it's a copy. I don't have an original fob or anything, but this is the one that I use. I also have this one, which is my spare. This is a newer style Ford keyless entry fob. Doesn't have a battery in it, but it is an original factory one, and I have it just on a thing because it's my spare. And I also have these. This is the tag from Betten Baker that it was on. You can see he bought it with $140,000. This is an even newer style Ford key, although it's a copy. No battery in it, but it does start the truck. And then this is just a cheap metal copy that doesn't start it. But this key, and my non-keyless entry key all started. I used to use this as my master key, but the buttons kept hitting themselves in my pocket, and I set the alarm off on it more than once when I was in the store, so I just said no more. Okay, let's look at just some real quick stuff. So, for example, just real quick, here is where my tab was for 2024, and I'm going to have to cover all of the important stuff. But here is my copy of my registration from 2024. Yep, expires 10/16/24. There's my plate number. There's the VIN. I don't care if you see the VIN, that, whatever. Here is my 2023 tab from last year, and you will see it says the same thing, except expires 10/16/23. Here is my original registration. You will notice here it says transfer registration, and it has my old plate number. That's the plate I had on the Explorer, and I basically just transferred it until I got a new plate for the Explorer, or for the truck, and then here is the original one. You can see it says transfer registration instead of on this one, which you can see instead says replacement of 7NEU64. Okay. That's the tab for that. Then obviously there's the second copy, which I never took off. That's for the ETX 7618 plate when I got it. Here is, I have no clue why he left this for me. Here are both copies of his registration, which you can see that's his old plate number. He had a passport tab. Both copies, for some reason, he decided to give me. I don't know why. But he did. Has his address on it, whatever. And then I also have, this is another thing I'm not sure why he left me. This is his insurance card. I have, again, no clue why this was given to me, but whatever. So we'll get to some cooler stuff. Here is a receipt paper from EJ's Automotive Repair in Lansing. This was authorizing. I have to be careful with what I show, or I can just do that. Muffler, resonator, tailpipe, exhaust. This was the exhaust job. 1-year warranty. It cost $350. And it was done April 11th of this year. So that's something he gave me, and then you have the waiver estimate, whatever thing. This, in this envelope, is my title. I'm not going to pull it out because there's too much to blur, but it is my title. This right here, I'm going to cover part of it, is my receipt from Costco when I got my battery installed. Here is a copy. So this is going to be hard to show. What I have here, paper clipped, this half sheet is my insurance, a copy of it. I have the application for Michigan Title, which I'm going to like show 2 inches of because there is so much personal info on here that I can't even blur it. We have the session receipt from the Secretary of State when I transferred the title, which was on 7/03 of 23. This here, the problem is he has a unique first name and last name, but essentially this is a bill of sale that he wrote up. I can show you the VIN number. That he wrote up saying that he sold it to me. And last but not least, and I'm not going to show it, but I'll show the back, is his old title, which he gave to me. So that's all that. Finally, we have, as expensive as it was, this was my invoice from Maury's Grand Ledge Ford from when they fixed the door. And that's it. That is all of the info for this truck. I really don't have a ton of paperwork on it. It's mostly just old titles and crap. A lot of stuff that I can't really show. So, yeah, that is essentially it. That is the conclusion to the story of my... Actually, I can show it real quick. Let's zoom in. Let's do this. My 2007 Ford F150. Thank you for watching. Feel free to subscribe and click like if you like what you see, and follow me on the web at isaac24.com. And maybe, just maybe, one day, you'll see a Truxedo.